5 p.m. in Moscow, we're watching RT International with me, Marina Joshi. A radical militant group that has been denounced even by Al-Qaeda for being too violent is reportedly preparing to take the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. Fighters from the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant have already successfully advanced in the north. They have captured the entire province of Nineveh, which you can see right here on the map, including its regional capital. Pushing south, the extremists took the city of Tikrit, although recent local media reports suggest the army managed to drive the jihadists out. It's thought the government's resorted to asking the U.S. to hit militants with drone strikes. RT's Marina Portnay explains how that might mean Washington engaging against its own military hardware.
But we're leaving behind a sovereign, stable, and self-reliant Iraq.
2.5 years later, the people America left behind are running away, fleeing for their lives.
Around 500,000 people have already escaped from Iraq's second city, Mosul, after the ISIL forced the army to retreat.
Reports say gunmen have also seized a nearby oil refinery town.
Iraq's Prime Minister calling for a state of emergency after hundreds of gunmen took control of strategic parts of the northern city of Mosul.
By Wednesday, militants had seized the Turkish consulate in Mosul, kidnapping the head of diplomatic mission and 24 staff members. Some 30,000 Iraqi soldiers reportedly turned and ran as militants from the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, known as ISIS, moved in, unleashing an all-out assault on the city.
They've taken control of hospitals, police stations. They have taken control of ammunition dumps and weapons stores that the fleeing government forces have left behind.
Many of the abandoned weapons and military hardware now in the hands of hardline terrorists were imported into Iraq from, guess where?
I think you all are aware of the shipments that we've provided that include the delivery of 300 Hellfire missiles, millions of rounds of small arms fire, thousands of rounds of tank ammunition, helicopter-fired rockets to the Iraqi security forces.
And don't forget about the U.S.-supplied Humvees. Here you can see ISIS insurgents riding and inspecting the vehicles, driving them across the border into war-torn Syria. Critics call it an unintended consequence of the U.S. war in Iraq coming home to roost.
There weren't any real sizable organized militant groups in Iraq until Al-Qaeda of the Mesopotamia arose to fight back at the U.S. invasion. To help the army, we've trained them for 8 years, and that didn't seem to work. Bush dismantled the original Iraqi army after the U.S. invasion, and that's the root of the problem.
The U.S. war in Iraq cost Washington close to $1 trillion and the lives of more than 4,500 soldiers. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis have reportedly been killed while the U.S. was looking for WMDs and spreading democracy. The unified and competent Iraqi military that was allegedly established has buckled. Weapons that were made in the USA are now in the hands of America's enemies, and the country left to fend for itself in a state of crisis. Marina Portnay, RT.
Now, in the past 10 days, more than 500 people have been killed in the wave of violence in Iraq, and that number is expected to grow as the army has met severe difficulties in fighting the jihadists. Well, let's take a look at why. Firstly, the extremists have captured Iraq's second-largest city and its warehouses, giving them cash, arms, and ammunition. The country's largest oil refinery area is also at peril of being captured by Islamists, which could endanger the country's already weak economy. And the number of militants is growing as the group is said to have released hundreds of prisoners from jail. And some of them have joined the ranks. The Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant organization is exploiting and fueling sectarian tensions in society, gathering public support among radicalized Sunni Muslims. And finally, another branch of the group operates in restless Syria just over the border, providing a steady flow of reinforcements to Iraq. Investigative journalist Robert Perry, who's a Middle East specialist, believes Iraq is collapsing and the U.S. should take responsibility.
Well, it suggests that the Iraqi military is in decay, that it's beginning to collapse. Clearly, this is a very divided country. In terms of the question of stability or instability, the U.S. invasion in 2003 was the force that shattered this nation. And it's been hard to imagine how it was going to be put back together in any meaningful way since then. You had even someone like then Senator Joe Biden, now the Vice President, suggesting some years ago that the country should be divided in three, that you should have a Sunni section, a Shiite section, and a Kurdish section. And it seems to be moving in that direction.
Now we can keep across what's developing in Iraq by heading to our website, rt.com, where you'll also find expert analysis on the key causes and players in the troubled country.